What's up, everyone? Welcome back to episode 3 of our MLB Playoff Push series. As this will be the last episode, and we'll get you set for the final 2.5 weeks of the season here. Really a highly anticipated playoffs coming up. A lot of stories coming out of the MLB now, especially the wild card races. So we're going to break it down for you right now. Let's start in the American League.
Yeah, the AL East.
And just before we get into it, we won't really focus on divisions because they seem to be all but settled, except kind of the NL East was interesting, but the Braves are starting to kind of run away with it there. And, of course, the NL West between the Giants and the Dodgers.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's pretty clear-cut. The division leaders pretty much have a hold on it outside of San Francisco and LA in the NL West.
Yeah.
So let's just take a look at the wild card race. And Toronto kind of took this thing by storm. The Yankees are still ahead of them right now, but they've just been surging, and they've always been...
Well, they're not ahead. They're exactly tied right now.
Yeah, but Toronto was kind of out of the mix, right? You thought it would be Boston and New York.
Yep.
Boston dropped off. New York didn't drop off. Toronto's just been that good. They've kind of taken Oakland out of the mix, and Seattle, I think, is fallen out too.
Yeah, I mean, at 3.5 games and 4 games, we've seen crazier things happen over a 2.5 week span. Obviously, when we last did our episode, the Jays were around 5 games out or so. So again, things can happen, but it looks as though it's a 3-horse race up top there.
All AL East teams.
Yeah, and the one benefit is to the Blue Jays and the Yankees. They have 2 games in hand on the Red Sox right now. So let's look into the remaining schedules for these 3 teams in the American League right now. Toronto has 7 games coming up against Minnesota, so a very winnable 7 games. They end the season with 3 games against Baltimore. Again, 3 very winnable games, although Baltimore has caused some problems, but if it's anything like the last Baltimore series where they're putting up 22 runs and they put up 44 runs in just 3 days, 2 days because it was a doubleheader, that is certainly should be a treat because they seem to have found their knack against Baltimore here. But on the other side, they have to play 3 games against Tampa Bay at the Trop. So, I mean, obviously this past series, they did well. But it'll be interesting now. They're going on the road to play Tampa. Tampa usually handles the Jays pretty well when they're playing in Tampa. And then I guess the key series is going to be the New York series. Their second last series there. New York comes to Toronto, so they already have the benefit there. The last time they played, they swept them in a 4-game series. So again, the ball is kind of in the Jays' court here.
Yeah, and they just have to continue their surge. It's going to be tougher now because they're playing tougher opponents.
Yeah.
So they can't take any nights off. They have to get the easy wins. But if they're a playoff team, they definitely have to step it up against the Yankees and Rays.
Yeah. And moving on to the Yankees here, they have a bit of an easier schedule. Right off the hop as they head into a weekend series against Cleveland. They head into then an early week series next week against the Texas Rangers. But then they have to play Boston for 3, which will be a tough series. They have to play Toronto for 3, which will be a tough series. Both of those series on the road, too. So never easy to go to Fenway or the Rogers Center. And then they close it out in Tampa. So again, it looks good for the Yankees now as they really have to get those wins early on to establish themselves like you just said before. But it's a tough way to close out for the Yankees, who have looked a little shaky. They had that wild run that propelled them up. Even at some point, we were thinking that they could contend with the division with Tampa. But then they've kind of fallen off that magical run. And it's not necessarily that they're playing bad, but they're not playing to the spectacular rate. Kind of like what we're seeing with the Jays. They had a run like that, very similar run. So... And the important thing is for these 3 teams, as we'll go into the Red Sox next, they just have to make sure they continue to win series. Because if you win series, you're playing above 600 baseball at that point. And that is good enough to get you into the playoffs. It seems like the magic number is probably 91, 92 wins will get you into the postseason. So ideally, these teams have to win 8 to 10 more Red Sox 8, Jays and Yankees 10 more games, 9 to 10 more games to get into the playoffs. So
Yeah, but Boston's got to catch up here. It's the games in hands that have them behind.
But they have the schedule to do so. They go into a 3-game weekend series against Baltimore. Kind of a tough stretch. 2 games against the Mets and then 2 games against New York. All at home, though. All those games are at home. Then they go on a long road spell to end the season. But it's against Baltimore and Washington, 2 of the bottom feeders in the MLB. So again, it's kind of the opposite of the Yankees here. They have kind of a tough start to tough middle, but a very easy end. So again, it's obviously not having those 2 games in hand obviously puts them behind the 8 ball almost, but they're out of the 3 of them.
Have 1 win.
Yeah, out of the 3 of them, their schedule looks the easiest. So it's just going to make this race a whole lot more exciting moving forward.
What do Oakland and Seattle need to get back into this thing? Just, I guess, a good run.
That's what it's going to take, one of the almost a Yankees or a Jays like run at this point, because it's not you look at it and you're like, okay, 3.5 to 4 games back when you have 14 to 16 games left. It is doable, but you have to continue. You not only have to win, but other teams have to lose. And when you look at Seattle, they have 4 teams in front of them right now. They have to make sure that those 4 teams lose and they keep winning. So it's not like these other 3 teams where the ball isn't in their court here. All these teams, Yankees, Red Sox, and Jays, they just have to keep winning. They don't have to worry about the other teams, but these other teams have to win and then have to worry about other teams losing. And that's something that a lot of people don't mention. They look at, okay, 3 games back, but you also have to continue to jump teams, which means they have to lose. And the way that the Jays have been playing, the way that the Yankees and the Red Sox are capable of playing, that's going to be a tall ask for them.
Yeah, and Boston doesn't have an opportunity to take out Toronto, so they don't.
No,
they have to bank on Toronto losing.
Exactly. There's no head-to-head matchups there for Boston.
But before we move on to the NL, let's just give some predictions here. How do you see this playing out? Do you think it's going to stay as is, or do you think Boston or even Oakland or Seattle can steal a spot?
I think it'll stay as is, but again, all the predictions I've made over the past 2 episodes, it's almost gone the opposite in some ways. It's really been a unique wild card race here. I think it'll stay the same. I think the Jays, the way that they're playing, they're playing with the best offense in baseball as of late. So they have to continue to win like this. They have to continue to score runs. The bullpen has to continue to be as solid as it has been. It's been shaky at times, but the starting pitching is probably going to be the key thing, with Robbie Ray really pulling up, Jose Barrios, Alek Manoah, Steven Matz has been good on this run here. So they have to really make sure that the starting pitching stays, because the offense has shown that, you look at that Oakland series when they were down by 8 runs going into the last 2 innings, and they ended up storming back to win that game 11-10. It's stuff like that where the offense is going to show up, but you just have to make sure the pitching is solid for them to really create those gaps in games.
Yeah, and do you think there's any danger in a surging team to drop off too early?
It depends. The way, you look at the Jays and the way that they're surging right now, it's a surge that we haven't really seen from other teams. They are absolutely obliterating teams when they score. Obviously, there's a couple losses here and there. The opening series against Baltimore over the weekend, or the opening game in the series against Baltimore on the weekend, and then of course the 2-0 loss that they suffered to the Rays. The Rays avoided the sweep there. The way they're doing it, I think it's a little more sustainable. As obviously you're not going to see them score double-digit runs every game, but it's one of those things where even if they're scoring 5 to 6 runs a game, it puts them in a good spot. This isn't a team that's surging with 4-3 wins or anything like that. They are blowing out teams. So even if the offense does come down a bit, even if the pitching isn't like Robbie Ray putting up 13 strikeouts a night, it does look okay for them moving forward. And the same goes with the Yankees when they went on their run. They're not playing bad baseball right now, but that's what I
They're just not as explosive.
And that's what it seems like it could be for the Jays. As obviously, I don't think you want to get to as bad as the Yankees were when they were losing 6 games in a row. But it's one of those things where you do have the ability to come down a bit in your level of play.
All right, now let's move on to the NL. Like we said, division leaders are kind of clear cut.
Yeah.
The first wild card is between the loser between San Francisco and LA.
Yep.
So it's really the second wild card we're going to look at here.
Yeah.
St. Louis has it right now, but San Diego, Cincinnati, they're not too far behind.
Just a game behind.
Yeah, so is Philadelphia in the mix, or is it just a three-headed race?
Philadelphia doesn't have a bad schedule by any means, but again, it's the same thing we talked about. They have to make sure that they keep winning games at 3 games back, but they also have to make sure that the Padres and the Reds and the Cardinals keep losing, which again, it's a tall ask. Again, it is possible, just like it's possible for Oakland and Seattle to make a jump if they have a good surge, but I think it's getting a little more unlikely at this point.
Yeah, so the Mets are out of it, right?
The Mets, it seems as though the Mets are out of it. They had a good run to get back to within around 2.5 games, and then they've just kind of fallen back. Okay. I don't really see any reason to have optimism with the Mets. But again, who knows?
Yeah, all eyes are going to be on Cincinnati, San Diego, and St. Louis. So let's start with Cincinnati.
So Cincinnati, they are a game back as we film before Thursday's games. So Cincinnati's remaining schedule, they have a tough weekend series against the Dodgers. Obviously, you don't want to get swept there. At least try to take one there. But then the rest of their season, other than a quick 2-game series against the White Sox, you have 6 games against Pittsburgh and 4 against Washington. So that is a very favorable schedule. There. So you get your wins there and just try to avoid getting swept by LA and the White Sox. Because then if you're playing that's well above 500 baseball, and that could very well be good enough to get you in.
Yeah, if San Diego and St. Louis can hold off. San Diego, what's it looking like for them?
Now, San Diego, they enter a weekend series against the Cardinals, which will be one of the biggest series, similar to the Jays-Yankees series that we talked about. That'll be huge and have huge wild card ramifications. But then they have 6 games against San Francisco, 3 games against the Dodgers, 3 games against the Braves. So arguably the hardest schedule. I don't think there's really any debate. This is the hardest schedule. There is no easy win there.
Yeah.
And frankly, the way that San Diego's been playing, all of these teams they're playing are better than them.
Yeah.
So
they have to figure something out, but it doesn't look too hopeful for San Diego then.
I don't really see a lot of reason for optimism for San Diego now. They really kind of dropped the ball on what was supposed to be a huge season for them, where they were supposed to be where San Francisco was, leading that division with the Dodgers. So
now St. Louis,
again, so they, like we said before, San Diego, they're going into a weekend series against San Diego. That'll be a huge series for St. Louis to maintain their lead in the wild card right now. Then they play Milwaukee. They have 7 games against Milwaukee. Those will be tough, but 7 games against the Cubs, who are really struggling. So again, St. Louis,
Cincinnati has the most favorable schedule, but it's the teams that win that are obviously going to get in there. So you got to get those games in San Diego and St. Louis, because even an easy schedule, it's not going to help you have good playoff performance if you get in based on an easy schedule.
They have to make sure that heading into the playoffs that they're blowing out these teams.
Yeah.
Like, you can't keep it close against these teams. Obviously, and there really is, when it comes to wild card race, there is no resting guys.
No.
They're not getting guys, fresh for the postseason. It's all hands on deck, and we have to make sure that we are blowing out teams so that we're not only making sure that we make the playoffs, but we're making sure that we are in good form to play better teams in the playoffs.
Whether it's St. Louis, San Diego, or Cincinnati, great, you made the playoffs. Now you have to go play San Francisco or LA. So
yeah, I think out of all these teams,
on paper, San Diego's the most equipped, but will they do it? It doesn't look like it. So
no, I think that St. Louis probably has the best team to match up with a San Francisco or a Los Angeles in the wild card game. But again, it's going to be a tall order. And obviously we'll go deeper into that once we know the matchups and we do our postseason preview.
Yep.
But that'll do it for this edition of MLB Playoff Push. Again, it's our last edition, so make sure to stay tuned for our playoff preview, which will come just before the wild card games take place in early October. Thanks for watching, guys. If you like this video, give it a like down below. Subscribe so you don't miss any of our other uploads. Comment down below who you think is going to make the postseason and what you think of our takes so far. And again, leave your comments below, and we'll see you in the next video. Peace.